Hi, everyone, and welcome to President Part 2. If you have not seen President Part 1, we totally encourage you to make sure you go back and view that when you can. But for today, we're on Part 2. I'm Sandy Russell, and I am a member of the Leadership Commission. I also am the Vice Chair of the Resolutions Committee.
And I'm Michelle Hurst. I'm also a member of the Leadership Commission, and I sit on the Bylaws Committee.
Let's get started. In this workshop, we will be covering aspects of managing your PTA with tips for effective meetings and working with your executive board and your role in managing that PTA. PTA presidents work with the executive board and the school administration to devise a calendar of events, budget, and oversee board and association general meetings, and attend committee meetings as needed. A president may serve 2 consecutive terms at a unit level, but must be elected each year. So before we look at how to make your meetings more effective, let's review the 3 different types of PTA meetings. First is the executive board meetings. These are held monthly. This meeting is open to officers, standing committee chairmen, and the principal, the teacher rep, and others that are listed in your bylaws. The purpose of the executive board is to review committee recommendations and assign duties and to recommend action to the association. This is where most of the in-depth discussion and busy work happens. That way, when proposals for programs, events, or spending money are presented to the association, the board can clearly present ideas and recommendations. So why aren't board meetings open to everyone? Well, one reason is to maintain confidentiality, as some items of business are confidential and not shared with the general membership. It also allows officers to share and express their views openly and honestly.
The second type of meeting is the association meetings, when you meet and will be found in your bylaws and standing rules. In them, you'll find which months and which day of the week to meet. Many PTAs have only 3 to 5 association meetings per year. Your association meeting is open to members and guests, but remember that only members are eligible to vote. The purpose of the association meeting is to allow your members to approve programs and expenditures, to adopt the audits and the budget, and to elect the nominating committee and to elect the officers. You also have committee meetings. Those are held as needed. The chair and the members of the committee are appointed by the president and are ratified by the executive board. Participating in committee meetings is the chair, the committee members, and the president. As president, you are ex officio member of all committees except the nominating committee. Participating in committee meetings, and the purpose of committee meetings is to handle the preliminary work and make recommendations for action to the executive board. So, as we just reviewed, there are 3 types of meetings: committee, executive, and association or general meetings. Minutes are kept at all of these meetings. Quorum is determined depending on the type of meeting. Your bylaws will tell you what your quorum is for each meeting. Motions, budget information, and expenses are recorded in the minutes of each of those meetings. At the election meetings, record the officers by name and position, followed by naming the officers stated in bylaws as check signers into the minutes. You'll want to take those minutes to the bank when you change check signers. Minutes are signed by the recording secretary following approval.
Been to meetings that are a bit frustrating and seem to go nowhere? At the end, no one knows what they should be doing? Planning is the key to effective meetings. So, pick your location. If you're on a school district grounds, you may need a facility use form. Be sure and give yourself plenty of time to do that. Remember to give plenty of notice that includes date, time, place, and what business is to be conducted. Publicize your meetings early in the school year so everyone has them on their calendars. If your school has a calendar, make sure your general PTA meetings and events are included on that.
As the president, you should review the minutes of the last meeting beforehand. Make sure the minutes of the previous meeting are available for everyone to read. They are great reminders of work that has been assigned and when it is due. To get started, ask board members if any items need to be on the agenda. The agenda should go out or be posted 10 days prior to the meeting. Everyone at the meeting should have a copy of the agenda. Also, get background information and materials out before the meeting so everyone can review them. Let officers and committee chairmen know if a report is expected. There should be no surprises for anyone. A good idea is to ask them how long they'll need to be on the agenda and time it.
So there are a number of ways to make your PTA meetings more effective. First of all, start when you say you will start. Be respectful of everybody's valuable time. If your meetings start late on a regular basis, people will start coming late, or maybe not at all. Second thing is to develop some ground rules for the group that can be used at a meeting. You know, what are your norms? Are you going to have one speaker at a time? Cell phones off or on mute? Are there time limits for your speakers? Be respectful. You may even want to consider utilizing the professional governance standards found in the PTA toolkit. This outlines everything in great detail and has you take a pledge at the end. You may want to also use a time agenda and to have the parliamentarian help you keep track of that. Plan when you want the principal or superintendent on the agenda, and using parliamentary procedure ensures a democratic process. If someone wishes to speak to something that is not on the agenda, let them know that you will make note of it for consideration at the next meeting. That way somebody doesn't take over a meeting and you have no idea of what's happening next. Try your best to end on time. Be sure to watch the clock throughout the meeting or have your parliamentarian do it for you.
Make sure the secretary sends the minutes to board members right after the meeting. Again, a reminder of assignments and work that needs to be completed before the next meeting. As president, follow up with board members to see if things are under control. Don't do everything yourself. Be available to assist when assistance is needed.
Committee meetings are conducted by the chair with committee members and the president as needed in attendance. So committee meetings can happen as needed. Quorum is determined by having the majority of the members present. So if you have 3 people on the committee, you need at least 2 of you, right? And this is where lengthy discussions of the preliminary work is done to hammer out all of the details. Committees then make recommendations, not decisions. Recommended action advances to in a report to the executive board by the chair. Details will include a timeline, the event details, and authorizations for expenses and budget. It's really critical that you get the authorization for your budget prior to spending any money at all.
Your bylaws and standing rules contain the list of positions in your PTA unit. Information on each of these chair positions is available online at capta.org and in the toolkit. Procedure books should be maintained by each chair detailing the events, budget, outcomes, recommendations for each year. Procedure books may not be actual books anymore, but information or files that should be forwarded to the next officer that has this position so they can continue to include best operating procedures and practices to share with the next chair and committee members. Additional or special committees can be added at any time with the executive board's approval.
Executive board meetings are held monthly and are open only to the officers, standing committee chairs, teacher representatives, and the principal. Your bylaws will list the members of your executive board. Excuse me. All of these officers must be members of your PTA. Executive board meetings are held monthly and are open only to the officers, standing committee chairs, teacher representatives, and the principal. Your bylaws will list the members of your executive board. All of these officers must be members of your PTA. Guests can be granted a courtesy seat by the president to share information. They do not vote and need to leave the meeting after the report. An example of this would be a school district official advising about curriculum changes or budget impacts, or somebody making a pitch for a new idea. Executive board meetings are held monthly, and this is where most of the in-depth discussion takes place. Typically, actions include appointment of officers and chairs, review of the budget, audit, and bylaws, and planning for speakers and programs at the General Association meeting. In addition, the executive board reviews committee recommendations and assigned duties and discusses recommended action to present to the association. This way, when proposals for programs, events, or spending money are presented to the association, the board can clearly present ideas and recommendations. So why aren't board meetings open to everyone, Michelle?
Well, officers need to know that they can speak freely with each other, and that if someone disagrees with a proposal, that they can express their feelings without concern for the public face of PTA. Items of business at this time are confidential and not shared with the general membership. Remind board members periodically the importance of confidentiality. Recorded minutes should not reflect the minutia of the discussion, but the actionable outcomes from the discussion. Nonprofit law requires 3 positions to be filled: president, secretary, and treasurer. In addition, your bylaws will detail which additional positions are elected. Parliamentarians are always appointed and ratified by the board. Additional members of your executive board, which you as president may appoint, include the corresponding secretary and the standing committee chairs. All of these need to be ratified by the executive board. Your bylaws will indicate if the auditor is an elected position or an appointed position. If the auditor is appointed position, the appointment must be no later than the date specified in your bylaws. For other appointed positions, appointments can happen immediately following your PTA unit's election and continue throughout the year as you find volunteers. California State PTA does not recommend or encourage the practice of administrators serving as officers or check signers. This is because a unit that elects the administrator to the office forfeits the administrator's important role as advisor. In addition, it misses the opportunity to develop new leadership from your membership. It's also important to check with your school district if there are policies and procedures regarding employee participation.
An important part of a PTA president's job is overseeing the executive board so everyone works effectively together. For board meetings, the president puts together an agenda a couple of weeks before the meeting. A sample agenda with a script for you to follow is in the toolkit of the California State PTA website. This is a sample executive board agenda. This agenda is a guide only and adaptable to meet your PTA needs. So let's look at each item. A call to order is what time did you start the meeting and has the quorum been met? Attendance is the time for a welcome and introduction. Minutes are approved either as written or as corrected. And those are from the previous meeting that you had. Financial reports include the treasurer's report as well as motions to approve actions. The treasurer's report is filed for audit. A motion is needed to ratify expenses and to approve newly presented bills. Every board member has a fiduciary responsibility and needs to understand those reports. The president's report includes information from council and/or district meetings, and it also includes updates on meetings with the principal or community organizations. The principal and teacher rep reports are given to give them time to share what's happening at your school. And then officer and committee chair reports would take place. And unfinished business is the president presents each item of unfinished business as indicated in the minutes. He or she should not ask, is there any unfinished business? It should already be known what we have. If you have new business, a motion is necessary before discussion and vote on any new business. All proposed business to be considered at the meeting must have been properly noticed to be acted upon. Once voted on at an executive board meeting, it can be brought forward to the next association meeting. Announcements, usually the date of the next meeting and important activities should be announced. and an adjournment. No motion is necessary to adjourn. Whichever report is being presented, it's not criticism or doubting to ask questions. It's making sure everyone understands. Please welcome questions from your membership or your board members so that there is absolute clarity.
Essentially, the executive board oversees the day-to-day running of a PTA. The purpose is to plan and conduct business between association meetings. Your main duties are listed in your bylaws and in the toolkit and include paying bills, creating committees, which the executive board has the authority to create and to carry out the work of the organization. In addition, the executive board fills vacancies. When a vacancy occurs in an office or chair position after the election or later during the year, the executive board elect, if it's following the election, but before the school year starts, or the executive board after your term begins, is responsible to fill the vacancy by electing a replacement. The bylaws explain this process in more detail, and be sure to check your bylaws for your fiscal year dates. So communicate and collaborate. The executive board members should plan to attend all board and association meetings. At each meeting, they should provide a report to the board and let everyone know what they're working on. The executive board is also responsible to provide board reports to the association at each general meeting. An executive board report includes the recommendations of the board to the association for adoption of the budget and audit reports, all programs, projects, and fundraisers, the approval and ratification of expenditures. It's critical that these items are all voted on at an association meeting. All PTA officers have a fiduciary responsibility to be good stewards of PTA assets. It is not just the job of the treasurer. Every officer needs to recognize the importance of being in charge of funds to further the work of the PTA and managing those funds well. Who is responsible for fiscal management? The PTA board and PTA members must decide how monies are to be spent and require a vote of the association. It is the responsibility of the board members to not only review and understand the financial reports of the organization, but to make sure the reports are given out at all meetings. It is your fiduciary responsibility to protect the assets of the organization. You must be transparent in order to protect not only the financial assets, but the most important asset, which is the reputation of your PTA.
Association meetings are open to all members and guests, but only members are allowed to vote, and they must have been members for at least 30 days. Meetings occur as stated in your bylaws and standing rules, and the agenda needs to be posted 10 days in advance of any meeting. The president can call an emergency meeting with 10 days notice. Typical actions that take place at an association meeting include the approval of programs, events, and fundraisers, the review and approval of finances such as the budget, releasing of funds, ratification of expenses, adoption of the budget, adoption of bylaws, standing rules, election of the nominating committee, which takes place at least 2 months before the election takes place, and the election of the officers. Both the agenda for an association meeting and the executive board are similar in their structure. The PTA membership is the only group with the authority to approve the following, which must take place at an association meeting: electing the nominating committee officers and your PTA convention delegates, adopting bylaws and standing rules, the approval of contracts for PTA programs and events, the authorization for an individual to represent the PTA, and to authorize a PTA's position on an issue after a study. At association meetings, a summary report of executive board meetings, not the minutes, is read for the information of the members. This is called the executive board report. Your association meeting is one of your opportunities to engage with your members. Make your meetings informative and inspirational by planning a program. Take the opportunity to share and brag about what your PTA has done. Talk about plans for the year and how your members are part of the picture. A great way to get members to attend is to have students perform or a guest speaker, but be sure and have them at the end so that they stay for the whole meeting.
These are things for you to become familiar with and do with your team right from the start. That way, you'll work smarter and save a lot of time and effort during the PTA year. So, ground rules. Boards should have mutually agreed upon ground rules and rely on them to work together. We mentioned earlier the professional governance standards. They have excellent ground rules. Goal settings. At the beginning of the term, your board should set goals, record them, and evaluate them from time to time to assess if they've been met. Your goals should reflect the mission of your PTA, and very often your goals are what will attract busy parents to volunteer their valuable time to your PTA. So make sure you publicize them frequently.
Communication. Open communication among board members is vital for a team to operate effectively. Conflict management. No one likes conflict, but if it happens, the team needs to deal with it through conversation and negotiation, respecting each other's views, feelings, and commitment. Team building is also vital to maintain the health of your PTA and for growing PTA leadership at your school.
Communication matters. How, when, and why you communicate with your members, board members, the principal, and teachers matter. Set up ways so communication is regular, meaningful, and two-way to keep everyone in the loop. As president, you are the face of the PTA in your community, and you set the bar for how people view your PTA. That's why it is so important as a role model to be welcoming and inclusive in your words and actions, and always to walk the talk.
So in the previous slide, we mentioned conflict management. So let's talk about this a little bit more in detail. Differences of opinion or in work styles and personality sometimes mean that conflicts bubble up in a PTA. And so we have 3 R's to share with you. First, recognize the conflict. As president, you will need to step up to manage these situations quickly, quietly, and fairly. The second, referee the conflict. Like any referee, it's important to remain neutral, to listen, and try not take sides. There is no right or wrong way to handle a concern, but there may be a more practical or feasible way. And the last R is resolving the conflict. Understand that not all will be happy with the decisions made in managing of conflict, and not all conflicts are easily resolved. But what's really important is that people know that they were heard and that they were treated with respect. Before a situation escalates, contact your council district president to exchange ideas on what might be the best method for you to use. And for more information on team building and conflict management, check out our workshop with that very same name.
So words, spoken or not, can lead to some of the most explosive situations. So why do we not speak up? We don't want to hurt people's feelings, but yet we'll sit back and let a situation build until there is no truth left in the words. Parking lot meetings and talking with everyone except the person with whom you have an issue is unproductive and can be very damaging. One of the hardest things you might have to do is have one-on-one conversations on this topic. But I ask you to remember the communication pledge on the screen and to take it back to your board and review it with them. When you're communicating with others, remember that everyone's perspective is different, and that as president, you're helping to build the bridges between your officers, the PTA in your school, between the PTA and your community. And it is important to lead with respect and kindness.
Okay, so start off by empowering and mentoring. There are many ways to empower and mentor other PTA leaders and volunteers, but all depend on clear communication. It's so important as a president to provide support and build confidence in everyone's abilities and skills so that they can work smarter and enjoy their volunteer experiences. Active mentoring helps to grow leadership capacity for your PTA for both today and tomorrow. Recognize and appreciate different work styles. The way people work is just as different as each individual. Some hear a task and run with it, while others need every detail and step of the process in writing. However, both can provide wonderful outcomes. As you learn more about their personalities, experiences, and skill set, this helps you to determine if they need more assistance and a timeline to complete a task, or if you just need to check with them 1 week prior to and make sure everything is done. Remember, it doesn't have to be your way to have it be right. Delegate. Always plan ahead so that you can delegate activities, ask for help, and share the workload. Give everyone a chance to do the job they were assigned, and don't try to micromanage. Consider breaking jobs into smaller portions so that they're more manageable. For example, we're hosting the principal's welcome tea, and I will need 5 people to help. 1 to send invitations, 1 for setup, someone to bring scones, another to bring a centerpiece, and 1 to help with cleanup. Many hands make for light work. And then thanks and shout out for volunteers. Always show your appreciation with a heartfelt thank you, and give a public shout out to the volunteers to show how much you value their work. Be the brand. Remember to be the PTA brand and to always factor in the fun in running your PTA. Check out our volunteer recruitment class to learn how to find volunteers. And one last thing before we go to Q&A. In the privacy of your home, we ask that you raise your right hand, and although we can't hear each other, repeat after me. I will not do this all by myself, since I'm part of a team. Remember, you are the manager of the team. You are not alone. You have resources with your councils, districts, and state. You have the website with tons of information, the California State PTA Toolkit. We are all here for you. So with that, that concludes our presentation. We wish you a wonderful year as president. And if you have any questions at all, please contact us at the slide given here, the information given. Leadership@capt.org. Thank you so much and have a great convention.